Hello and welcome back to Kim Reads as we continue with Nancy Drew, The Secret of Shadow Ranch. Chapter 12, Lights Out. What wonderful luck, Nancy exclaimed softly. To think of finding this bottle after all these years. Let's see what's inside it, Bess urged. Nancy put her little finger on the bottle and slid out a curled up paper. Carefully she rolled it and then glanced at the signature at the bottom, a bold V and a heart. It's a letter from Valentine to Frances, Nancy said. The girls crowded close and peered at the faded handwriting. The long dead romance came alive for them as Nancy read aloud. My dear girl, I am writing this haste to tell you that I truly love you. With that we could marry, but the law pursues me and I doubt I will live much longer. Too late, I am sorry for misspent my life. How sad, murmured Bess. I want you to have my fortune, the note continued, but many people are seeking it. I know my mail is seized. I have hidden instructions in the bottle. A little of my booty has been converted to gold and melted down in special pieces, dear Frances, made just for you. I wonder what he meant, said George. As Nancy was about to read on, the ceiling went out. George gave an exclamation of annoyance. What a time for the bulb to go out. Wait here, I'll get one from the kitchen. As George felt her way out of the room, a suspicion flashed across Nancy's mind. Slipping the letter into her shirt pocket, she said, Come on, Bess, and went down the hall with her friend at her heels, asking her what was the matter. In the living room, Nancy saw the shadowy figure of Aunt Bet standing by a table lamp. The lights don't work, she said. At that moment, Alice's voice came to the hall. Did someone blow a fuse? Her fears growing, Nancy groped her way to the phone and picked it up. The line was dead. She ran her hand down the wire. It had been cut. Nancy returned to her living room as George hastened it from the kitchen. No lights there either, she reported. And probably no water, Nancy added grimly. The pump runs by electricity. She wanted to say someone had probably damaged the generator or cut all the wires. There was a moment of shocked silence. But why? Alice asked in a frightened voice. I'm afraid our enemies are about to make more trouble. They figured we're helpless without lights or phone. What do you think they'll do? Aunt Bet asked anxiously. Nancy said she could not be sure, of course, but she expressed fears about the new Palominos. We must report this to the men on patrol, said Mrs. Raleigh. They may not know yet anything about the power failure. Nancy agreed, but we must be very quiet about it. If the gang doesn't suspect we've guessed their plan, we may be able to catch them in the act. Nancy suggested that Aunt Bet and Alice keep watch in the house while she and the cousins look for guards. The three hastened to their room to get their flashlights. Don't turn them on, Nancy warned, unless you absolutely have to. The girls walked out and paused at the edge of the portico. Somewhere in the darkness, men were ready to work more mischief. You two go to the East Men and report to Dave, she said. I'll locate the Palomino guard. Be careful, Bess warned. You may find the troublemakers instead. They struck at the pump house before, remember? That's close to the big meadow. That's why I think they won't do it again, Nancy replied. They'll probably pick on a different place. Good luck. If you run into trouble, yell. George and Bess melted into the darkness, and Nancy hurried in the opposite direction. As she gazed over the fence of the big meadow, she could see most of the Palominos standing quietly together near the far end. One or two were browsing in the middle. There was no sign of a mounted guard. Quickly, Nancy circled the table in the adjoining tack room, but found no one. Puzzled, she looked across the yard to the corral. It was empty. Where was the guard? I must find someone, Nancy thought, but before she could move, there came a loud whinnying from the stable. Nancy wheeled and hurried to the door, and then paused, well aware it might be dangerous to go inside. She opened the door and quietly stood listening. Except for the nickering of a restless animal, all was quiet. Nancy stepped in and walked cautiously between the two rows of stalls. When she reached the one where her horse stood, it occurred to her that someone might have unsaddled him to prevent her from going after the phantom. but she found the saddle still in place. As Nancy walked quietly along the left side of the horse, he whinnied nervously. She hurried reassuringly to him and stroked his head. Then she felt the girth to make sure it had not been loosened and ran her hands over the bridle. All was in order. She was about to leave the stall when there came a loud whinny from the other end of the stable and the sound of a hoof hitting a bucket. Nancy froze. She heard a footstep. Suppose it was one of the gang. If he finds me, she thought, I'll be trapped in the stall, unable to sound the alarm. Nancy knew she must try to get out of the stable. The footstep had seemed to be near the excited horse. But exactly where was the intruder now? Nancy slipped out of the stall and, hugging the wall, moved toward the door. The next moment, she was seized from behind and a hard hand stifled her outcry. As Nancy struggled, there came a sharp exclaim, and she was suddenly released. Nancy, said a familiar voice. It was Texas. Great jumping stairs. I'm sorry. Are you all right? The cowboy asked anxiously. Shucks, girl, I thought you were one of the Phantom gang. Nancy took a deep breath. I thought you were too, she said and quickly told him her news. The cowboy gave a low whistle. Trouble's coming, that's for sure. Where are all the guards? Asked Nancy. Mr. Rowley and Walt Saunders had gone down toward Tumbleweed to watch the road. Mr. Rowley figured if outsiders are helping to do damage, they might come by way of the car, park it, and sneak into the ranch on foot. If that's how it's done, maybe he and Sanders can nab him. Shorty took early watch, so he's probably sacked out in the bunkhouse. I'll set to guard the stable area, Tex went on. But I figured I'd sure be less conspicuous on foot. A while ago, I heard a noise from here and came in to check. It was nothing, just Daisy thumping all around. She's restless tonight. Who's watching the Palominos? Nancy asked. Bud. He wasn't a few minutes ago. Oh, said Tex. Something's wrong here. He'd never leave his post. Come on. The two hastened outside. As they turned toward the meadow, from the far end came a high, weird whistle. The signal for the Phantom horse. Tex stopped short and then raced toward the house, shouting the alarm. Moments later, the changing of the iron triangle outside the kitchen filled the night. Nancy, meanwhile, had sprinted to the stable and led out her horse. As she sprang into the saddle, she could see the mysterious glowing steed galloping from the trees in the meadow. It hardly seemed to touch the ground, and it wavered in the wind. I'm going to catch it, Nancy vowed. It spurred her horse to racing speed. Straight ahead the meadow gate, but it was close. Taking a deep breath, Nancy gathered her mount and cleared it. As before, the Phantom was heading straight across the meadow. Nancy rode hard to cut the animal off. She intended to see the Phantom's bridle, should it have one on. In the moment, the apparition turned and raced down the meadow, straight toward the Palominos. Shrilly whinnying, it plunged into their midst. Some Palominos shied in the rear, and others ran wild. Nancy's horse, trying to overtake the fleeing Phantom, pounded through the scattered group. Suddenly, one of the frightened Palominos thundered across her path. Frantically, Nancy tried to pull her mount aside. Too late! The two horses collided. Nancy flew from the saddle and hit the ground so hard she blacked out. And that's the end of that chapter. See you later.